people try to take care of their interests.
Yeah.
What are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me?
She says it's a quid pro quo. But when it comes to a black government that is negotiating what you're going to do for me, what am I going to do for you, they call it corruption.
Oh, yeah, of course. Always.
Call it corruption.
Yeah.
Nkululeko on Cultr.
Yeah, Mr. Thapel, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome back once again. You are a member of Parliament, and there was an interesting development that happened. Well, not you specifically. Jamah has one seat in Parliament, and the most important discussion in the last 7 to 10 days in Parliament was the discussion surrounding Palestine and Israel. South Africa was deciding or had decided that. Okay, let me just read it specifically, actually, so that I use the right language for this, because it was a heated topic of debate. But I want to understand your position as Jamah, given that you have a seat in Parliament. So it says the economic freedom fighters made a motion in Parliament for South Africa to end diplomatic ties with Tel Aviv and Israel. And that was passed after a heated debate on Tuesday. The ANC had called for the motion moved by the EFF leader Julius Malema to be amended to state that the closure of the embassy would only last until a ceasefire is agreed upon by both parties and they commit to a binding United Nations agreement and facilitated negotiations whose outcome must be a just and also sustainable as well. In motivating for the amendment to the motion, the ANC Chief Whip Upemi Majodina took issue with members of the opposition benches who were against the removal of the Israeli embassy. And those parties are the Democratic Alliance, Inkatha Freedom Party, Freedom Fund Plus, and the African Christian Democratic Party, who voted against the motion. But anyways, the motion was passed with the support of 248 members of parliament, whilst 91 voted against it. President Cyril Ramaphosa will now have to consider the parliament's position, but the power to remove the Israeli embassy still lies with the union buildings. Your political party, Jamah, has one seat there. What was the stance of your political party?
So the union building would also be a reference to the executive, which is led by the president. Himself, right? Let me greet you.
Thank you for joining.
And the viewers at home. But where we are right now in South Africa, we also need to be reminded to celebrate the 16 days of activism against the scourge of GBV, gender-based violence. We know through gender-based violence, we found violence, the verbal violence, you find psychological violence, you find socio-economic violence, you find physical violence, you also find a violence that our women or female counterpart, the sexual violence, which is known to be rape, right? Yeah. So I wanted us to remind each other first before I can even embark into the topic to say, Samachita Ekasi, we need to take it upon ourselves. We take this lesson to be as serious as it ought to be, because we also need to understand our female counterparts, they are as human as us. And also, if there are opportunities, socio-economic opportunities, they need to be elevated. We need to empower them so that they can also elevate themselves. We shouldn't close ranks and monopolize the space, because historically, patriarchy has given us as males the privilege. But going back to the topic, the issue of closing down the embassy of Israel. Yeah. The United Nations has declared several times the Israel state to be an apartheid state. That is the resolution in the United Nations. And there was also a declaration to say the people of Palestine have a right to self-determination.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is a commendable act. We need to commend. Actually, we need to celebrate that motion as South Africans, because we understand exactly what apartheid stands for. And Palestine was one of the states that assisted apartheid South Africa to for us to
That
be where we
pressured
are today.
the apartheid government to stop abusing black people in this country.
100%. So much so, Guti, they deployed every resource that they had. And at the time, they were also under siege by the same apartheid regime.
Yeah, whilst they were experiencing their apartheid, they were calling for the end of our
apartheid. So much so, Guti, they brought everything to us with the hope, Guti, once we are liberated as South Africans, we'll never forget them. We'll come back and liberate them. So it's an issue of principle. So a solidarity for Palestine is not a token of charity, or it is not an act of charity, but it is an obligation to us as well, because these were our friends. And even when Nelson Mandela invited one of the countries which are supporting the apartheid in Israel, he said, you can never tell me, so he said, you can never tell me who my friends should be.
Yes.
Right? Your
enemies are not my enemies. Yes, I remember the speech.
Yeah. And then he also further said in one of the quotes that is famous, Wuti, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestine. So we need to uphold to those principles. So we as Al Jamah, we forever are pro-Palestine. We support Palestine. And we will never be deterred from that support.
And that has nothing to do with the fact that you are primarily an Islamic party.
In Palestine, there are Muslims who are Palestine.
Yeah.
In Palestine, there are Christians who are Palestinians. Yeah. There are Jewish who are Palestinians. And they are facing the very same atrocity. So they do not segregate. So if there's a child who's been killed, that child, they do not look whether you are a Muslim or you are a Jew. Their child is killed, period. When there's a woman who's been killed and raped, the woman will be killed and raped, period, on the basis that they are in Palestine. So this has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with Israelis manipulating the emotions of the religious groups to say this has everything to do with Christianity or Judaism or Jewish religion versus Islam. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, interesting question just on that. Sorry to cut you. What does that do? What does closing the embassy do? Basically, what effect does it have effectively on the relations between South Africa and Israel? Does it stop anything to do with trade? Are we still consuming as South Africans anything that comes from Israel? What does it effectively do?
Look, that will also be a question of what bilateral agreements do we have with Israel, right?
Because there are.
Yeah, there are bilateral agreements. So one would be political agreement. So when we enter into a memorandum of understanding, we enter with you politically, so we'll support you politically. All your political activities we'll support. Or either we enter into an economic agreement or understanding. Everything that is in relation to the economies of South Africa and Israel, interchangeably, we can benefit from each other. Or we have an MOU that says, okay, we are cordial. We do not enter into politics, we do not enter into the economy, but we just cordial, all right? But however, it is a significant call for us to demonstrate our support to the Palestinians first. And politically, I know that South Africa has a bilateral agreement with the Palestinians. So that one will never be questioned. So closing down the embassy would also mean, Wuti, we are barring them from our political engagement, because politically we have taken a position as a country. So it would be up to them, Wuti, up to what extent do they want to close us down in the relationship that we currently have.
I'm not well versed in traveling, but I do suspect that when you are about to travel to a country and you need a visa, there's something that usually needs you to engage the embassy of that country.
Correct.
So am I correct in assuming that maybe even the traveling would be affected from South Africa to Israel as a result of this?
Correct.
If it's passed by the president?
Correct. Yes, the traveling will be affected, period. So it would be a token of demonstration of our principle as South Africans. Let me divert a little bit.
Sure.
So when I was the mayor, by the way, I was invited by, or rather there was an engagement. As the city, we have a sister, which is the MOU with the New York City, the Americans. So we have about 600 business communities Americans who are doing business in the city of Johannesburg.
Okay.
Tentatively. I met the Consul General, Sparrow, in one of the events, the summit, Africa-US Economic Summit. So we had a discussion. How are we going to resuscitate the relationships? Is there an appetite? You understand? And then he said, no, let me arrange a meeting for you to meet the ambassador of the United States. I forgot his name, the African guy, right? So I said, okay, sharp, we will. But protocol doesn't dictate for me to meet them outside. Protocol says it has to be arranged by my office and they must come to my office. But because out of goodwill, I then said, okay, where's the ambassadors? No ambassador. And then they convened with, no, let's meet in Cape Town. It was on a Friday, 3:00 in Cape Town. So I arranged, and then it was confirmed. I landed at 2:30, went into Avis to get a vehicle to take me to the destination. 30 minutes before that meeting, I'm already in Cape Town. All right. The ambassador cancels the meeting. And then my office calls. The ambassador has cancelled. And then Yabo's with why are cancelling. Then I'm told, with the Washington DC called him to an urgent meeting, right? So politically, that was a demonstration. Okay, they are disrespectful, one, to us, and the sovereignty of our city as government. They do not respect.
Yeah.
You understand? Let alone the international politics that Americans are playing. So some of us have a direct interaction or altercation or experience with how they think, these people who are engineering a apartheid and undermining the sovereignty of other states. So that would also be a question of me if I am comfortable enough to visit the USA based on my stance. You understand? But in hindsight, I want to say to the general public and my peers, Ekasi, our people, they shouldn't be deterred by what's happening, because there are many other economies that are emerging and strongly emerging that we as South African, we can pursue if BRICS alone. And BRICS being, we are the champions of BRICS or the leaders of BRICS. That is the emerging economy that we can also open up a dialogue to say, Bafetu, this is how we need to move.
There's something interesting with the ANC in that discussion on Parliament, that this closure of the embassy will then be lifted upon conversations being undertaken for peace between Israel and Palestine, facilitated by the UN as well. So it doesn't completely, the ANC wanted that to be stipulated so that it doesn't completely close the door for them reopening the embassy if the president takes that decision.
So in that essence, it would mean what a president has to decide whether they are. You remember when Minister Usisulu was the minister of, I think she was in Derco at the time, she downgraded the Israeli embassy into an administrative embassy. So meaning what
new story.
Yes, meaning what we could travel between South Africa and Israel, vice versa. They can travel to South Africa, and it will allow the system to document those who are coming legally into our country or those who are exiting legally from South Africa to Israel. But the motion is to shut it down completely. Yeah. And for me, where I am, and for Jamah as an organization, we are pro that motion. This is why we also voted with the motion to close down the embassy. We are in a full support. You know, a leader like Julius Malema, we can't take it away from him, Guti. He's very intelligent. Julius Malema, and in terms of the generational gap between me and you, Julius is not far away from our peers.
Yeah, from
he
our
understands.
Age group, yeah.
Yes, no,
and which is actually a significantly bigger age gap between him and the rest of the members who are senior
Parliament.
In Parliament.
Correct.
He's usually 60-something year olds, and I think he's in his 40s.
Yes, correct. Because he knows and understands Guti, apartheid Air South Africa at the time, it was funded by the very same embassy, or the people who came through the same embassy into ESA. And there are parties, political parties, that are also funded through that door. You understand? They are funded through that door. And if we allow them to emerge in the next coming election, then it means we are taking back our people into that state of the apartheid. Technically speaking, or literally speaking, we will be taking back South Africa into that, because the policies remains these are the policies that are segregating by nature. These are the policies that created Soweto to be what it is. These are the policies that has that are advocating for spatial injustices.
Yeah.
You understand? So Soweto, to be where it is, Soweto was taken away from participating, go closer to the economies. And when there's a development which is happening in Soweto currently, I'm talking about in this modern day and age, that development doesn't come towards the north, which is closer to Johannesburg.
Yeah.
But it is the densification. It takes you further down into Patriotic Alliance extension 30. So if a person ohlala at DK, for argument's sake, ohafa ediding 20 rands for a taxi, then a person who lives in Patriotic Alliance extension 30 or 29, they will have to pay about 20 or 30 rands, or over and above 30 rand. So that alone, that system alone, we haven't interrogated and we haven't decolonized.
Yeah, we never fixed the apartheid spatial design. Exactly what you're describing is how even my city, Cape Town, is designed. Basically, the further away from the CBD you are, the poorer you are.
Correct.
And it takes you 30, 45 to an hour to travel to the CBD, and it's more expensive.
Correct.
And also it speaks to how urgent services are delivered to you the further away you are from the central business district of Cape Town. And that is mirrored in other cities as well, as you're just describing.
Correct.
So, and I suppose I take from what you're saying is that's why the stance against Israel is that you understand the apartheid and how it affects South Africa even to this day,
100%.
and therefore you are in solidarity with those people. Can you speak a little bit about the parties that were against that motion? They are documented. It's the Democratic Alliance, unsurprisingly. It's the Freedom Front Plus, unsurprisingly. Surprisingly, it's the Inkatha Freedom Party, but then someone else could say it's not surprising. And the African Christian Democratic Party, ACDP.
Yeah.
Why would you think that those four are in support of what is happening, the killing of the people in Gaza?
Unsurprisingly, the first three parties that you made reference to, the DA, the FF Plus, the ACDP, they stand for apartheid. So the ACDP could be a blackface, but inherently it stands for apartheid, and it is used to seduce the Christians in South Africa, to buy sympathy of the Christians in South Africa, to think, Wuti, this has everything to do with religion, but it has nothing to do with religion. I think I was in a debate with one of, I don't know if it's one of, or the only daughter of Kenneth Meshe.
Yeah, the leader of the ACDP.
The leader of the ACDP. She is running an organization that is pro-Israel. It's an NPO. I forgot the name, but we were in...
How is it pro-Israel, such an organization?
It has everything to do with... I forgot the name. Yeah, but it has everything to do with Israel. And it's a lobby group for Israel, for the Israel. So obviously you would understand how the resources channeled into ACDP, because she's heading that NPO, which is pro-Israel, right? It was... I had a debate with her in one of the television channels, where we had a picketing a certain consulate, and then I was invited. So people wanted to understand, why are we picketing against the American consulate or embassy, if you may call. Now, with the IFP, we also understand what they stand for. So closely, if you look at the Moon Pact, the short, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Moon Pact.
So there is an agreement by certain parties that whatever the result of the election is next year, they will be in a coalition. They will form a group.
Yes,
That's
correct.
what they call themselves, a Moon Pact.
A Moon Pact, yes.
And the IFP and the AC, the DA
Yeah.
and the Freedom Front Plus are all
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah.
I think there are other parties too.
Correct. So
Isn't Action SA part of that as well?
the Action SA is part of the pact.
Although they did not vote for this,
They- remember-
it's not documented that they voted for this.
No, they are not in parliament.
Or
the
they-
Action SA, they are
okay.
not in parliament.
Yet.
Yet. Yeah, we don't know whether they will be in parliament, but they're not in parliament yet. I think the PA also, they are open about their stance, pro-Israel
Pro-Israel stance.
but they're not there on the basis of which they are not in parliament. They are not
Yes.
represented in parliament. But clearly, when we go post-election, we will have a clear understanding as South Africans. We'll have a clear understanding as ECAS, what is it, which parties exactly represent our interests. So to answer your question, IFP alone, we understand what they represent based on the history that they have
Oh yeah.
before 94.
They had a working relationship with the apartheid government. They were happy to accept a role
Yes.
within that
The apartheid
that
government.
arrangement by the apartheid
100%.
government.
Yes, 100%. So if we look at IFP, if they want to buy black faces and black votes closely, the IFP might be the one that says no, but we can look at the IFP. We are working with the IFP. We are not discriminating any
Not
black person.
racist.
We're not racist. Look at Ibosa. We've created Ibosa. We're not racist. Ibosa, Abu Maiman. Look at people like Abosara. I'm gonna parties like Abosara. I'm gonna say Sarah on the basis of which even the leader openly said, no, we are pro Zionist. We are pro. You understand? So we should go into our elections with a clear understanding, which who are we going to vote for, and will it be detrimental to us as black people, and how is it going to assist us as black people? At Jose alone, like a city of Johannesburg, when the DA was in power, I think my previous interview I briefly touched into it. Black professionals were purged by the DA. Companies that are service providers in the city of Johannesburg, they were also purged by the DA on the basis of which they are wearing a certain color T-shirt. There was no morality, there was no principle. It was on those professionals and those companies seen to be black, with the support and the white faces, the black faces, which were we called them mascots at the time, which were leading the city. The DA's policies are not for black people. That professional who was purged is somebody and is feeding someone ekasi. Somebody who is unable to go to a city. You spoke about service delivery, which is going to be affected by the spatial planning, but not only the spatial planning. When the DA was leading the city, purging service providers was detrimental to the service delivery because vehicles were impounded. Pick it up, being a clean. GMPD was never visible on the streets. You can name how was it detrimental to the services of our residents, of our people, which I'm saying black people. Of course, black, according to the AA, it's vast, but black people in general. Yeah.
Why should, on the topic, just maybe last one on the Israel closure of the embassy, I would like to unpack this a little bit more, but I suppose it's a conversation you have with different people as well, just to get their perspectives. But I think it's interesting because I think that we don't have enough information about the effect of it. How are we taking money? Are we cutting the financial ties between us and Israel? Are they losing money as a result of this, or is it just a token, political tokenism to say we seem to be doing something? But I suppose in the fullness of time we shall find out, because still, and as it mentioned on the article, that the president still has to make a decision. And of course, we know that a lot of black people suspect the president that he doesn't usually do things that are seemingly pro-black. But just on the last one on this part, why should black people care about what's happening in Gaza, what Israel is doing to Palestine? and not even because the conversation is limited to the 7th of October. What happened on the 7th of October as if that history started on the 7th of October. And every time I'm looking at these conversations, I'm like, okay, this is like, they are framing this as though there was a terrorist attack and therefore people are retaliating, similar to what happened to Americans in 9/11. There was a terrorist attack, a couple of thousand people died, unfortunately. And then you have to go and fuck up a country as a result of that and take its resources. Why should black people care about what's happening now, which has always been happening between Israel and Palestine?
Look, to tell you the truth, I just read an article this morning about the 7th October. And the article says, actually, Israel is the one that attacked itself.
There is a conspiracy theory
to
that
conspiracy
effect.
theory, yeah. There is a finding, right? Over and above Israel, whether Israel or Hamas, mangenekas gwami edladleni, right? Angchayisani netime. Ngiyadwadla yikuwe, right? It happens ukuthi we might not see eye to eye with siblings or parents, and then zoshayhor. Your first reaction, if I'm terrorizing a time alak or or anyone, your siblings, and anichaisani, your first reaction, you're going to fight me. You're going to set aside
any differences
we have as a family, right? Hamas, it's a movement, right? It's a movement such as Umkhonto weSizwe, the APLA of the days. You can name them.
Yeah, and they always call them terrorist organizations.
Even Umkhonto weSizwe was called the terrorist
all
organization.
Of them, always they call them terrorist organizations, although to us, whatever Umkhonto weSizwe did, they are still heroes to us.
100%. The ANC itself was called a terrorist organization at a time. So the PA was called a terrorist organization. Hamas is also a resistant movement. Whether they did it or not, it's a conspiracy nonetheless. But what we are saying, if they did it, they are a resistant movement. So instead of the wars being endleni, gwaku, or edladleni, you are taking it next door. Am I making sense? I don't know what mangibeka like iskas. I'm taking it next door. I'm taking it elsewhere.
So to simplify it though, for the audience, Israel is saying that it is attacking Palestine to get rid of the members of Hamas. They further state that members of Hamas, the group, which is to South Africans, we could call them people who are like Umkhonto weSizwe. They are fighting for the freedom of Palestinians. And Israel says that you attacked us on the 7th of October. You killed hundreds of our people. And you took people hostage. As a result, we are looking for you. But we see that when you are hiding behind people. Nesekas.
You
are in the midst
among
of
the
people.
Yeah.
Right? So we cannot tell between a regular person, a civilian, or a Hamas terrorist. That's what Israel is saying, of course.
That's more interesting because the governing party, Israel, is not Hamas. So it means Hamas is the minority because they are not governing the state.
Palestine.
Palestine.
Yes, because Palestinians have said.
By Fatah.
Yes. Palestinians have said that they've had, some Palestinians have a problem with Hamas and their approach.
Yes, correct.
Similar to how some South Africans would have had a problem with ANC. Because even with Umkhonto weSizwe, I remember in Long Walk to Freedom that Mandela does mention the fact that in the 1950s or the 40s, the years preceding the formation of Umkhonto weSizwe, the conversation is about violence and non-violence.
Correct.
And within the African National Congress, there is this debate which is robust.
Correct.
And people are turning their backs on each other to say, why the do you want to turn to violence?
Correct.
And people are saying, no, we need to turn to violence because we need to call upon the attention of the international community.
Correct.
And so on.
Correct.
So it's a similar dynamic. It doesn't mean that every black person was for Umkhonto weSizwe or their methodologies. But inherently we understood what they were doing. It was not random acts of violence from nothing.
And sadly, they don't only attack amakasi, but they also went to hospitals.
Yes,
and
which is
children hospitals.
interesting. Yeah, which is interesting.
And
they're being asked what's happening with children hospitals? What are you doing there?
Yes,
Because specifically,
because those
know,
children do not carry guns.
Yeah, you know that
they can't be
are no
members of
terrorists
Hamas.
there.
You understand?
Yeah.
So it's more interesting to also cite what is currently happening. Which bangena emahosi, and then like it's a principle of war. Anywhere you go, you do not attack hospitals. You do not attack people like nurses who are even wearing the camouflage or who are in a uniform, like going to war with their counterparts. You do not attack you do not attack those people, all right? But
why should black people care? Because that's the question.
Yes.
They are being bombarded with this news story.
Yeah.
They hear it all the time on SABC One and every news channel, ENCA, Newsroom Africa. It's being reported.
Yeah.
And black South Africans, because they are confronting load shedding,
correct,
confronting poverty.
Yeah.
They're like, why should we care about this?
100%.
So why should they care about
it? They should care on the basis of what we've touched, which we are obligated. We are obligated because these people are the people who had ensured Wuti Thapel is sitting on Nkululeko having the same discussion today. So they should care. In as much as it doesn't talk to bread and butter issue of our states or the state of our affairs, it's a principle for us to care. Ngoba if there are many countries that are being oppressed, right? And Ubuntu, for you to care about the next human being, the well-being of the next human being. The human rights commissions, they are so quiet about this. But you would find which there are areas generally where people care about the well-being of a dog. You can fire cricket.
Yeah. That's a great point.
I'm a fireworks because the dogs will be intimidated. But
that's the same message every New Year's Eve in the suburb that I live in.
Exactly.
They care a lot about that.
Especially the very same suburb.
Yeah.
I was on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen the backlash of me. So, Thapel Amad is this boy Opumekasi. He's not known. And he emerges into an economic hub of not only South Africa, but Africa as a whole.
One of the greatest cities in Africa.
This
city this city is a big deal.
100%. And his emergence has nothing to do with him as a person, but it has everything to do with the disruption of the system. The disruption of the system, when the DA 2016 took power, they saw the light. How can we run with it? But while I say collapse and rebuild it. You understand? Those are the interests that are happening in Palestine. So this young man, a black boy, when his son in Ufage is Kafsa Palestine, what messages does it say to the general public? You understand? So does it factor you are a South African first, you are a mayor that is running the city at Johannesburg versus the mayor that is running Palestine? In an actual fact, in Johannesburg alone, it has a memorandum of understanding as well with one of the cities in Ramallah. It's called Ramallah.
In Palestine.
In Palestine, yeah. So they have erected a statue of Nelson Mandela in Ramallah. The biggest statue in history is Mandela. And I would say also our stalwarts and heroes and heroines, they are celebrated elsewhere, right? But going back to your question, how does it affect us, this thing? It's a disruption nonetheless. There are interests in politics. And in Palestine, there are also similar interests that they have in South Africa. So the backlash, Thapel was seen in a Twitter and saying he's supporting Hamas. Right.
You said that?
Yeah.
That's a badass statement to say. That's a badass statement
he's
to say.
Hamas.
You should wait for the backlash and be ready for it after saying that.
There was a huge backlash. But I understand where I am. It has nothing to do with the statement alone. but it has everything to do with who's the custodian of the statement. You understand? Who's the custodian of the statement? Because when the first day I went into the office, literally the second day I was already criticized. The following day.
I mean,
I was sworn in on Friday.
Even your comrade, Ukwamanda, his
Yeah.
educational credentials have been,
Yes.
questioned. Like
Yes.
the scrutiny that the two of you had,
Yes.
in a very short period of time that you became
100%.
mayors,
Yeah.
is ridiculous. It's on
Yes.
another level. I don't even remember other mayors because I'm not from this city.
Yes.
I knew you guys immediately because of the scrutiny.
100%. Because it's a disruption that we've caused. And not because we are a small party. No. It is what we represent. Period. All right? What we represent. We represent a black child, Ekas. And by virtue of us representing a black child, Ekas, the struggle and the pain that is in Palestine is the same pain that is happening, Ekas, of a black child. Was Ekas. Because we can't separate the pain. It has been violent by the system to build Soweto to be what it is. That's violence. You understand? And it is equal violence to kill abantwana, ehos, innocent children, deliberately so. So I'm trying to get a point of conversion on what I'm saying. Ngoba, we are reproducing Soweto. We get married, sebaningosi Soweto, and every time our children who are in Soweto, Mebevoga, they look at the ceiling, it is the constant reminder of the history, because the history doesn't have blank pages. We are still trapped by the system. And they must ensure with Esan, this ones understand the system for what it is. Because they are also vocal on other areas, international areas. So let us, it is said, who owns the narrative controls the mind. Yeah, because in as much as I said I support Hamas, I also said we are Palestine. Hamas is Palestine.
Yeah, I suppose
So
the
together we
timing of the
support.
statement,
Yeah.
though, I suppose the timing of the statement
Yeah.
would be something. So I understand where you're coming from with that, because I understand the historical context. I think we're on the same page, even politically with that issue, because I've always also sympathized with Palestine, because you understand the historical context. Not fully, but as you're reading and growing up, and you're curious, and you're reading, people are being killed, they took their country.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, it resonates. It's
Yeah.
the same shit that happened to us.
Yes.
That 7% of the population is running our country.
Yes.
Type of thing. So I kind of understand it from that perspective. But
Yeah.
I think it depends on how long you say the timing of it. Because if you say it on the 7th of October, it's insensitive. If you say it around the 7th of October, it's insensitive, because whether we like it or not, people died on the 7th of October.
Yes.
And specifically those people were Israelis.
Yes.
Right? And they were targeted because they are Israelis.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's a fair thing to do if you do it around that period.
Yeah.
You can be for Palestine and unapologetically. But if you are for Palestine precisely after Israel lost lives, although Palestinians lose life every day before
For
the
how many
7th,
years?
before the 7th and after the 7th.
Correct.
But I suppose for a political leader, you would have to question the timing.
The timing, yeah. No, I agree fully. So the leadership style was also questioned, right? But retrospectively, when a leader stood up in a public platform and said, you must hunt down Hamas, you must kill Hamas wherever they are, one of the leaders in South Africa, in particular, you look surprised.
I know that Americans have been saying that, and the British have been saying that to say
hunt down Hamas.
And then there was a question of proportionality.
Yeah.
So because you've lost 100 people, for example, how many are you going to kill in Palestine? Where
they say it's collateral damage.
Yeah, but something like
it's
that.
collateral damage.
So I've heard it enough times that I don't know specifically which leader you're talking about.
Yeah. So Okeni Kunen in particular,
a black person,
a black person, whose party represents the most marginalized communities. I don't know if I'm making sense. The most marginalized communities, by the system, right? By the system, whichever way we would want to brush it off or to downplay it. Our colored counterparts, brothers and sisters, they're the most marginalized. And any party that represents them, which is not wrong to represent them, I'm pro those communities as well. I can tell you now without any shadow of a doubt, when there was an outcry in Westbury and Bosmont of the gun shootings while I was the mayor, we ensured the intergovernmental relations is strengthened. And at the time when I was still in the office, we were able to curb those violences, the gun violences in those areas, right? Because I understand what is it exactly that apartheid stands for. Because apartheid it's not limited to the skin color, but it is limited to the system that is brutal and violent against a layman who's walking on the street, whether colored, whether black African, whether black Indian, but the system remains violent. So then yet you are a leader who represents those communities, Indian, black Indians, black African coloreds, or coloreds in general, and black Africans. And then you stand on the podium and say, you don't understand what apartheid stands for. You understand? You go to Orania and then you come back from Orania, you say, no, Orania doesn't represent apartheid. You go to Israel, you come back from Israel, and then you say, no, Israel doesn't represent apartheid. Where there's a United Nations resolution, the entire world, and even the recent events when there was a voting, when United States and other few countries that are in support of, they lost in that resolution. There was even a recent resolution, I think a month or two ago, that says Israel is an apartheid state.
Yeah, it's universal. It's not even an accusation by a few people.
100%.
It is universally accepted globally that is an apartheid state.
100%. So why should I be apologetic?
But that's why I'm saying,
if
like,
there's an international,
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Your sympathy with Palestine and Hamas and everyone suffering all over the world. Actually, when you side with the people who have been dispossessed of their land, it makes sense because of where we come from. I'm just saying specifically to that incident, it would just depend on the timing of it, because it shouldn't be said you can't be for Hamas, although there's a conspiracy theory that they didn't do it and whatever, but you have to be very sensitive to the fact that hundreds of people died in this moment. And if proven that it is factual, leadership would dictate that just don't say it out loud at that time. You could say it now, 2 months later, you could say it before, you could say it next year, you could say it any time to say you are in support of Palestine, but not specifically when hundreds of people have died.
It's a catch-22. Right, I hear your sentiments.
When I'm coming from?
Hear you. Period. I hear you. And I'm sympathetic to the lives that that died. Right, generally, because in as much as we would want to say, even if we want to be sensitive to a degree, there's war in Palestine, and there's war in Israel. And there are people who are being killed on a daily basis. And it is not insensitive for you to take a position, because if you are found in a situation where you have to pick a side between an oppressor and the one who's been oppressed, once you take a middle path, you are inherently supporting the oppressor. This is why oppressors can violently say, we support the state of Israel, whether they can substantiate or not, whether there's an ideology behind or not. You can ask them, even the people that I have made reference to, what is an ideology behind you supporting Israel? They will never substantiate, jokingly.
Oh, money can be an ideology.
Money can be the ideology.
If they're your funder, because they're not scared of funding causes.
100%.
The state of Israel funds a lot of causes.
100%. So like somebody who was saying today in Twitter, the only thing that we saw at the stadium was balloons with air.
Oh yeah, let's go there actually, because I think whatever happened to the Patriotic Alliance, so the political party Patriotic Alliance, I think they were celebrating an anniversary, or they were something like that. There was a celebration at the Orlando Stadium, right?
Yeah.
And the conversation is sparked because there weren't too many people attending there at the Orlando Stadium. I think Orlando was probably 40,000 capacity or 30,000, something like that.
It's about 60, I think.
Okay,
60,000.
That's a huge stadium, actually.
60, 60, 70, somewhere there.
Sure.
Because FNB it's about 90.
Yes, FNB is big, so I always just look at it in comparison. I think, okay. But I don't limit my observation on them too.
Yeah.
I want to spread them across even to people like yourselves.
Yeah.
Because at the local government elections, the Patriotic Alliance got over 100,000 votes.
Yeah.
And you got 30, 35, 40,000 votes, right?
Yeah.
Number one, what did you make of that they couldn't fill up Orlando Stadium? And it looked bad, some of the pictures, because it didn't really look like there were people there.
Yeah.
And then the next question should be that how do you guys get people to listen to your causes? All of the smaller parties, because even the PAC, I looked this morning at the last IEC elections, parties like yourselves, Jamah, PAC, Patriotic Alliance, a lot of them, it's difficult. It seems to be very difficult. Black First, Land First, African Transformation Movement, all of them, they're still lingering around the 30,000 to 100,000 mark. It's very difficult to break to 200,000. What do you make of those pictures first? Do you think people are punishing them for their stance on Israel? How could they have made that better, to look better?
I think you said on principle, Kona Ama organizations that thrives from the ideology of money first, the economic ideology, right? That's you, quoting you verbatim, right? So I wouldn't do such allegations at this stage, or it's whether the issue of parties being funded by.
Let me say what I said again, because in context we were talking about Israel, and I'm saying Israel is not scared, or Israeli business people. We could say that specific, because I think now parties have to reveal who their funders are.
Correct.
And I remember seeing websites where they show an Israeli businessman funding this party and that party and that party. So we're talking about ideology, and I'm saying there is an ideology of money.
100%.
Sometimes someone cannot, as you were saying, someone cannot explain ideologically why they're taking a certain position.
Yes.
But then logically you could say maybe it's because there's ideology of money. If you then go and search and find out even Jamah who funds it, you may like, oh, okay, it makes sense because the Palestinians are funding it, for example.
Yes, correct.
That's why they're taking this stance.
100%.
So I think that's what I was saying there. But with the stadiums and the number of people being able to support you when you guys do events and stuff like that, what do you make? Why are there no people at that event? And could you, Jamah, be able to fill up Orlando Stadium, for example?
I'm going to get there. I just wanted to reiterate and put an emphasis on the reference of the ideology in particular. I also made an allegation with what was seen at the stadium was a balloon with air.
Yeah,
right.
Said that.
So it's like a leader that's like that particular balloon. When they speak, it's only air that comes out.
So it's a metaphor. It's a figure of speech.
Yes. Now, what I'm trying to head to in this discussion, when I understand. In politics, there's a contestation of space and there's a contestation of power, right? That's a principle of politics, contesting. But the pressure that was placed to Thapel Amad at the time wasn't a political pressure on principles and merits, but it was a pressure that had a cynicistic approach in it. The sinister, because if you follow Twitter closely, Helen Zille,
I'm not actually on Twitter at all. I don't follow what happens there.
Is it?
I know that some people. I know Helen Zille, for example, is a big personality there.
Yes,
and she ventilates her thoughts there.
100%.
And I think even Julius Malema is very big on
Twitter.
big
on Twitter. Yeah, she then posted, I think a week or two after I resigned, the leader of Patriotic Alliance betrayed us.
She specifically said those words.
Yeah, betrayed us.
Betrayed you or
Not us. Us
the
as
Democratic Alliance?
the Democratic Alliance,
Okay.
not only limited to the Democratic Alliance, but it would also suggest Uguti, the same people who funds the Democratic Alliance are the same people who are funding the same party. Because if there's any chance of him, the leader of the Patriotic Alliance, being coerced to push me out, it would have meant Uguti, effectively he collapses government. Am I making sense?
I'm following.
And that is a black government, right? And what do you do after collapsing the black government? Do you shift and go back, give the white people a power, or the people who advocate for apartheid a power? Because it would have meant what he was supposed to go that side, but because the concessions they were not reached, and then he remained this side, which is the PA, because there were discussions. Ngapha nangal. You understand? So betraying us in Helen Zille's wedding, it means Guti, it could either be the DA, inclusive of the funders of the DA.
Well, I suppose
But
what
that is
you are
just an
describing,
allegation,
yes, because what you are describing is something that happens a lot in coalition government, in
yes.
coalition arrangements.
Yeah.
That people try to take care of their interests.
Yeah.
What are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me?
100%.
Like different.
And then she calls it a quid pro quo.
Yes.
That's her words. She says it's a quid pro quo. But when it comes to a black government that is negotiating what you're going to do for me, what am I going to do for you, they call it corruption.
Oh yeah, of course, always.
Corruption.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So
that's what happens when you own things.
Yeah,
when you're able to tell
the narratives. Yes. Yeah. So going back to your question, the PR. Retrospectively, I think Oketin, in numbers, proportionally, he's bigger than Jamah. You understand?
Yeah.
But I can assure you, Wuti Gayton went out publicly and he uttered Islamophobic remarks. Right? And then he said, we don't care about Muslims, even if they don't vote for us. Even if one person votes for me, I'm okay with that. But not understanding Wuti, the demographics and the niche that he's operating in, which is predominantly colored communities.
Yeah, there's a significant Islam. Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, there's a significant Muslim voters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
that's a good point.
Yeah, on merits, coloreds are either Christians or Muslims. Predominantly. And these people, they uphold on their faith. Irrespective of what social ills are there, we need to respect them for what they are. They uphold to their principles of their religion. So he and these people are interacting. They are a community on the ground. They are one community on the ground, and they interact with each other, whether Christian or Muslim. So the biggest mistake that they are doing is to paint a picture as if this thing has everything to do with religion. It has nothing to do with religion, but it is an issue of humanity. The same Eldorado Park that doesn't have adequate services because of the segregation of the system is the same system that is happening in Palestine, perpetuated by Israelis, because they have business interests. So they need to push you away from participating. In my opening remark, I made an emphasis of the GBV to also look into the space of the socio-economic empowerment of our female counterparts, because they are also excluded by the system and they happen to be the majority in our country, right? So that has had a Patriotic Alliance. In my analysis, it has had a Patriotic Alliance. Over and above that, PR was not even strong. You know, whether you like it or not, a leader like Julius Malema, he's a leader.
They did a phenomenal job when they did the stadium. I think it was FNB.
It was FNB, 90,000 capacity.
That was incredible.
Right. And in his tweet yesterday, he says, not Julius, but Gayton, he says, no, the people came to capacity, 60,000. That's what he says.
Oh.
Because it was reported by Jock, which is 60,000 people were at the stadium. But because people were hungry, people left the stadium. And Jock didn't allow them to come back into the stadium. So this is why the stadium is empty.
You believe that?
He believes it.
Oh, okay. You're just reporting what he said.
Yeah. He believes it because it's his public statement.
Yeah, because people usually flex
yeah.
with those things. Like
Yeah.
when you have 60,000 people
Yes.
in one venue,
Yes.
you want ENCA, Newsroom Africa, and SABC, and everyone else, Times Live, to be able to shoot that.
Yes.
So that you can capture that moment
Yeah.
and you can flex with it, because you can use it to entice other people to say we are a popular party.
Yes.
So why couldn't
Yeah.
we see
I-
more images of that?
I
or
think at a
videos of
time where 60,000 people were at the stadium, is the equal time where the media was also at the stadium. At least the media would have captured that to
That's what I'm
say
saying.
the people went out for lunch. But it has never happened in a rally that people,
All of them.
they leave the stadium
at the same time?
at the same time. So he believes it. And we should also question the people who believes what he says as a leader. It's questionable. You understand? It is questionable. And I'm reiterating, it is questionable because he's using religion, faith, right? And as if your priests say you must drink this water, maybe with salt, from the faith-based ideology or rhetoric, you wouldn't ask your pastor because it's faith-based. It's not science. There's no 1 + 1. You know. So if you believe Gayton, the leader of the PA, saying there were 60,000 people and they left for lunch, and then they were not allowed to come in.
He specifically said that.
Yeah, on Twitter, and he believes it. I'm not saying, because if he didn't believe what he says, he wouldn't have went on Twitter, but he believes it. So the followers must start questioning that kind of leader.
Can I read something very interesting for you? Because I think as you're speaking, I kind of understand what I was reading, that there perhaps is a bit of animosity between the two parties.
Yeah.
There's something that I saw on the Patriotic Alliance page. I can't see it anymore, but it was something to the effect of your party, Jamah, and your mayor is a puppet. That's what they said in a statement, actually, the Patriotic Alliance. I remember just reading it this morning, that there is 80 billion rands available for the Johannesburg, the city of Johannesburg, and your party is being pushed by puppeteers to front so that money. I'm paraphrasing. This is very dangerous what I'm doing, but it was something to that effect. I'm thinking about it now as you are talking about him and talking about their event as well. That are the tensions, because I saw you and Kenny Kunene in an image before. I think recently, did you go and watch the Soweto Derby?
Yeah.
You and Kenny Kunene, and I think Ukabelo as well was also there.
Yes.
To support Chiefs or either Pirates, whoever is supporting.
So Kabelo is supporting Pirates.
And you are supporting
I
Chiefs.
was supporting Chiefs.
There you go. And Kenny
is supporting Chiefs.
There you go.
Yeah.
So but when you were together in that moment, given that there's this verbal interchange, describing you as how they see you as a puppet and so on, and you just being people who are at the cookie jar for the 80 billion in Johannesburg, and you saying the things you're saying about him, which is not malicious. You're factually stating what he said and what happened to his party, and then you are adding your opinion about if people can believe him with what he's saying, what does it mean about him as a leader. So when you were at the Soweto Derby, what happened? Like, were you cordial with each other? Is there any cordiality between the PA and Jamah?
There isn't any animosity that I know at this stage on a personal level. I'm making these references because it's a political debate, and it is of the public's importance, the political debate. One should also take into cognizance, Uguti, like I said, it's a contestation of the space, right? What I'm saying is not malicious. I'm making specific references to answer the questions that are specific.
Yeah, you're not being malicious.
I'm not being
But I'm
malicious,
sure they
yeah.
wouldn't like it when they hear you say it. Although you have the right to say it.
It's a debate nonetheless. They will also come to similar platforms. They will have to come to similar platforms, and also it's not an insult.
Yeah.
Am I making sense? I'm not insulting anyone. They must also come into similar platforms and talk and voice out with why are they pro Palestine and why are they working with us? Because the last time I checked, the PA was pro Palestine. When we Jamah tabled a motion in 2019, there was a motion to rename Senton Drive Leila Khalid Drive. The motion was carried by council and it passed. My apologies. The Patriotic Alliance at that time was pro Palestine. When I was the mayor, out of all the parties that are on the table with us, it is only the PA that recommended Uguti I should go to Palestine. Major, so Palestine, re support early stages when I was the mayor, before there were changes of views, right? And I don't know what was the cause for them to change.
But ultimately,
their
there's no
stance.
animosity
There
between yourselves and the Patriotic Alliance,
there
other
isn't.
than the political contestation, of course.
Yeah, there isn't animosity.
Can we go back to this issue, your stadiums? You've described what you think about what happened with them.
Yeah.
But I didn't limit that to them specifically, because I looked at broader. I'm just gonna go through the numbers, and this is an interesting question for you, for Gayton, for Holomisa, Bantu Holomisa, everyone.
Everyone, yeah.
Because in the last elections, this should be the national elections, if I'm not mistaken. So the smaller parties, so for example, PAC got 24,000 votes. Forum for Service Delivery got 23,000 votes. Jamah got 29,000 votes. Congress of the People got 21,000 votes. The Good Party got 75,000. The National Freedom Party, the NFP from KZN, got 56,000. The UDM 50,000. The AIC got 49,000. ACDP 92,000. ATM 63,000. And then the PA, if you consider them as one of the smaller parties, got 111,000, which was a big chunk. So this should be the last local government elections, because they were not at the national elections.
Local government.
Yeah, it's the last in
2021.
Okay. So that's 111,
Yeah.
And then Action SA 240, Freedom Fund Plus 276, IFP 638, EFF 1.1 million, almost 1.2, and then the DA 2.5 million, and then the ANC 5.2 million. And the interesting stat with this and the national elections is that the IEC indicated that only 8 million of the 26.2 million registered voters had cast their ballot, which is the lowest turnout in 27 years at around 30%, compared to other turnouts, 2016, which was 57%, and others at 45%, so 30%. And I said, even in a conversation that I had with Penwell last month, I said, even this year, next year, what will not happen will be people deciding that, oh, okay, I hear Jamah's message, I'm going with them. It will just be a bunch of people saying, young disappointed ANC, I'm not voting. Yeah. So every single interval, every 4 years, there's people just deciding not to vote instead of voting for someone else as well. So that stadium issue is not a stadium issue for me in my mind's eye. It also has to do with, besides the statement being made by the Patriotic Alliance, I understand what you're saying. It's an interesting dynamic that if you offend the Muslim community, which is a significant portion of the colored community, not all, but having stayed in Cape Town, grew up in Cape Town, born in Cape Town, I understand that there's that dynamic too. So that could have played a role. But how do you guys convince the voter to vote for you? And I think I probably have asked you before.
Yeah.
But when you look at these numbers, it's just next year it's just going to be more people, another 6 million people deciding not to vote, to add to 24 million people who didn't vote the last time around. Yeah. So it's more than just a stadium issue. It's about the apathy towards smaller parties.
Yeah. Look, I don't want to fall onto the trap which we have small parties, all right? Whether
Well, it's impressive how
Yeah.
you became the mayor of one of Africa's greatest cities
correct.
with 30,000 people voting for you,
100%.
as opposed to other parties that have 2 million people voting for them.
correct.
That's I said it to you the last time we spoke that
Yeah.
that's one of the most ridiculous. Like, if you, given that you understand football, there was a guy called Molefi Nseki,
Yes.
who coached Kaizer Chiefs,
Yes.
and he had never coached anywhere, before,
Yeah.
but he managed to coach Kaizer Chiefs,
Chiefs,
and
yes.
Bafana.
100%.
In his CV, there's Bafana, and there's Kaizer Chiefs,
Chiefs,
and it's
yeah.
like, whoa, that's a milestone.
Yeah.
Although it almost will never happen to someone else, because they have to see you coaching smaller clubs before they give you a huge club,
Correct.
the biggest club and the greatest club in this country, which is Kaizer Chiefs.
You are correct.
So even you, the greatest city in Africa, or maybe in the top 2 or top 3 greatest cities in Africa. South Africa has like 62 million people, and around 10 to 11 million of them are in this city.
Correct.
Which and you were able to lead them.
Yeah.
So I'm not disputing how important you are.
Yeah.
But relative to the numbers that the ANC and the DA get, you get 25, 30,000, others get 50,000. You are smaller parties in that, by that definition.
Proportionally, yes.
Yes,
we are.
yes.
Proportionally, we are. But however, why am I demystifying that notion is that it's the new normal, like COVID. It's the new normal. We are no longer conventional. Our democracy is tested in South Africa. We are new parties. So this is why people like Abo Thapelo, when they emerge, there's a backlash, because this is a new party, is not known like Molefi Nseki and the likes, right? But what I'm making reference and what I'm driving towards is specifically your question. We repeat so that I can put it into context.
Yes. So I'm saying, given that I've just gone through the numbers.
The numbers, yes.
How are you? Because when you had 25,000, when you had 40,000 votes, you're going to have to first convince those 40,000 people to go and vote for you again.
I hear you.
And if they don't, you may not have a seat in parliament, which has happened to other parties, that they are just too close to the limit of being not useless, but you don't have enough of a number so that you can be a role player in the game, because you don't have a seat in the legislature. It's too close, because the threshold, I think it's around 30 or 25,000 so that you can qualify for a seat. I don't know what the exact number is. And then the other thing, you juxtapose that with the second thing, which is the people that are not voting are going to be more next year. That is, like, you can bet your house on it, because it's been a trend. And the number is that at 30% turnout in 2019, that was the lowest in 27 years of democracy. It's going to continue. So how do you tell those people, no, don't turn your back with this voting thing? Say goodbye to the ANC and hello to Jamah, for example. Because that's not happening at the moment. And that also speaks to the stadium issue. It's not just the stadium issue. It's about how do you get those people.
Convince the people to support you. Look, Tina, as Jamah, the first thing that we've done, our acts, our action alone, has convinced parties that are in our coalition, which we call the Government of Local Unity. We are a formidable force. When the DA at the time, 2021, after that election, when they wanted to vote for Umpo, the EFF gave them the seat, remember? It gave them the seat, and then they stepped aside, the EFF, to punish the ANC for whichever reason.
They stated the reasons in a press conference, I remember.
Before a Patriotic Alliance voting with the DA, on principle, and our principle as the party, when I'm saying we are a formidable force, I am saying we are only the reliable party at this current moment. Even the DA, Democratic Alliance alone, came to us. They were left with 3 votes to constitute their government. They came to us before they went to the PA. They came to us, they lobbied us. And we told them on principles, on the issues of the conflict that brought us together today, of Israel and Palestine, we will never support you. Because for as long as you're supporting Israel, it means that you are pro-apartheid. And if we are giving you an opportunity to govern, we are taking our people back to apartheid. The first person who called me, I remember it was on a Sunday. It was Nkululeko. Hey, leadership. Le voter leader le Patriotic Alliance. How can you guys do this? You know, you guys are sellouts.
Le DA.
Yeah, le DA.
Oh, okay.
You guys are sellouts.
So he was protesting you voting with the DA if you were going to do that.
Yeah, this is Kenny Kunen calling me. Yeah, you guys are sellout. How come you voting with the DA? And these people are killing people in Palestine, and you should be the last people to vote with them. I said, no, I've never seen that. We were never approached. We are the ones who are mandated by the party to facilitate the discussion of the coalition. But the DA has never approached us. And we issued the statement immediately, the public statement. And the first publication that published our statement is the one that is closer to Abokeni. I forgot, News something. It's a online print publication. They captured it. So I'm talking about 2021, when this government was constituted. The Patriotic Alliance was still pro-Palestine. I'm talking about this term, because the first party that called me, it was them. All right. So what is more interesting is the evolution of the ideologies.
I think I understand. I think we anyone who's watching up to this point, we understand that.
Yeah.
But on that question of getting people, because
I'm coming.
You are explaining your usefulness in the political space, right?
Yeah.
But what you're explaining is you being useful to your core. You are a good party to work with because you work on principle. But that is specific to other political parties.
Correct.
It doesn't speak to how you're reaching to the people, so that you don't.
I'm getting there.
Close. You are dangerously close to not being able to make parliament the next time if the same 30,000 people don't come back and vote for you.
Okay. So I'm getting there. I'm saying, how do we convince the people? We have demonstrated, Tina, apart from the government, the levers of power that we own. But our principle has demonstrated, Uguti, for them to vote for us, which is to be the custodians of the city. It's not a coincidence. They have seen something in this particular party, which is Jamah, a specific party that is Jamah.
And naturally the question should be asked, Uguti, why after you they even went for your comrade?
For our comrade.
Ukabelo.
Yes.
Which means that there is something.
There is something that they've seen.
Within that political
arena.
The arena, because I don't want to call it a game, but it is somewhat a game though.
Yes.
That they, as a matter of compromise, because even if you look at the percentages, you guys are 0.25 or 0.10.
Yeah.
And other guys in that coalition will hold a greater number.
Yes.
10%.
Yeah.
They never went for them. They just went for you. Like you are a compromise. When people are at a deadlock, they say, okay, let's go for these guys. Why are they trusting you with that power?
Yes, we've been entrusted with the biggest economic hub because there's something that they've seen in us. So that thing, it has to be sold to the general public. I'm talking Jamah's point of view. I'm not talking for other political parties. And how do we sell it? We demonstrate by the levers of power that we hold. The city of Johannesburg, manje, it's stable. And there's service delivery. And who's leading the service delivery is the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Councillor Nkululeko Amad, who is deployed by this minute political party, which is Jamah. Right? So this is our selling point to the general public. Let alone what the media says about individuals, because the media is more interested on, I'm talking about conventional media or the narratives. Let me say narratives instead of media. They are more interested on personalities as opposed to service delivery. You know, when somebody asked the mayor, Nkululeko Nkewu, hey, how do you cope under the backlash and attacks? He says, we only focus on delivering services to our people, people will always speak. For as long as those talks do not hamper the service delivery, we will continue implementing. You understand? So we have taken a position. You know, when the car it's no longer stationary, it moves, and there would be dogs that are barking. They will follow that car. You know, we've taken that position with, no, let's drive. We are driving.
But it doesn't still speak to how you are still dangerously close to not
Yeah.
getting a seat next time.
Not really.
And
I can assure
well,
you.
numerically,
Yeah.
so we can unpack that even at a numerical level. How many votes does it take for someone to be in parliament?
Tina, we are growing day by day.
Yes, no. I'm just saying the numbers that are documented, the
Yes.
ones the last
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
that there was a vote
Yes.
in 2019 and 2021,
Yeah.
we know that you are consistently between 20
Yeah.
and 30 to 35,000.
Yeah. Yes.
What number constitutes one seat in parliament?
So remember, what constitutes a seat in parliament, it's not stagnant or it's not conventional. It is determined by the voter turnout.
Number of people who voted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to be quite precise, we as a party are growing day by day, literally growing day by day. There are even political leaders who are leaving their own organizations and joining Jamah. Right. We deal with communities on a daily basis. We are growing, and I might even be attempted to limit it into Johannesburg or limit it to Gauteng, because this is where I have a reach. But I know even in the KZN, there would be people who would call me, who has my contacts, to say, hey, leadership, I'm interested in joining your party, man. Do you know anyone here that I can contact? Please refer me to that person. So gradually we are growing. I don't know what, because you know the pulse is something else. Ne? You might find people who are wearing white shirts. Out of 10, 9 people are wearing white shirts, and they are going. And then you celebrate with, hey, yeah, we are a winning team. But when you're counting the results, it's something different. The pulse, that's the reality of the pulse. But I know that there are people who are committed to vote for Jamah. And one number that we get out there, we do respect, and we will ensure which this is the single vote that is going to empower us.
Would you fill up Orlando Stadium, or
Would
at
we?
least half?
Not at this stage. We don't want to go there to play into the gallery. We are not under pressure.
I'm not saying you must do it, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
hypothetically speaking,
We would, yes, definitely. We would.
hypothetically, if
Hypothetically.
you were to hold a meeting or a rally or whatever,
Yeah.
at Orlando Stadium, there would be 60,000 people there.
100%. We
And
would
you're
feel it
confident?
with confidence. But I want to make a disclaimer, which we are not under pressure.
No, I get you.
We are gradually growing our organization, and when the time arises, we will fill the FNB,
So
not
if-
just the Orlando Stadium.
I get what you're saying. You're saying you're growing every day, so I don't have any information to the contrary of that,
Yeah.
other than to say that as it stands, you are on 20-something, up to 30-something. So
Yes, correct.
if with that number you were to go to Orlando Stadium, it wouldn't be filled
Yeah.
with this current number.
Yeah. So Jamah,
So we can then say that with your words, next year you are expecting to grow double.
we are expecting to grow double.
You're expecting to be between 60 and 100,000.
Yes. Jamah, let me also put across this. We have 9 councillors throughout the country. Ne? All our councillors of the party, where there is the imbalance of power, we are in to balance those municipalities, and we are placed in strategic positions. We hold positions of chairpersons of oversight committees, chief whips in other municipalities, and now we have the mayor. I know there's one talk in Umzinto. We have a chairperson of EMPEC, but there's a talk to pursue or persuade the ANC there, because we are assisting them to give us the speaker's position as well. So it's a discussion nonetheless. And all our councillors holding those critical positions It's a token of demonstration to our ability to govern.
What you've just said is a portrayal of, or you've given evidence of your political competence, and no one can question that. And I've already even said earlier that for you to have one of the greatest cities on the continent, and not only you, plus your comrades,
Correct.
Mukabelo, that speaks to the level of trust that other political parties have with you and your political competence, or whatever reason why, whatever the incentive is there for them to say, let's compromise with these guys, even though they don't have the numbers.
Correct.
So I don't not believe that. It's very clear. What I think you should speak to is the how to, because when you go to the IEC website and it tells you how much someone has got local government election, or it will give you the stats, right? It will also tell you the percentage of growth relative to the last time, right? And the percentage of growth is not double. It hardly is double. Even the EFF is always teetering between 10% of the national election and 12%. It is hardly a double, because double for them would mean an additional million people on top of their 1.2 million. And then instead of getting 10, 11, 12%, maybe getting 21 or 22. So although they could say, EFF is spectacular in being able to amass people, and they are big enough to be able to fill up a 90,000 stadium. But then the mechanism of how to get to double is more difficult. And I've noticed this in every political conversation I have with political leaders, is that there is a lot of optimism with their political parties. Carl Niehaus was very optimistic about his areta, and I asked them a specific question that, could you fill up a hall? And could you call, because he was talking about a website and how many people have signed up to a website. Me being a tech savvy person who runs a website with my partners, a football website, which has 150,000 visitors to read articles about soccer. I know how difficult it is to get there, and it usually takes 3 or 4 years to get that traffic, that level of traffic. And we cannot say, even with our football audience, the ones that are watching our YouTube channels and stuff, we cannot claim that we can get them to a venue, because that's a different level of commitment. It takes more than data and Wi-Fi to go to a venue.
I agree with you to a certain degree. Retrospectively, we need to look at our national team, for argument's sake, compared to the EFF, who can fill up the stadium.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is a national team. But also we also need civic education. We need to teach people to love their country, to hold the flag of their country. EFF is seen to be one of the, I'm talking in terms of followers, is seen to be one of the movements that are disciplined, and they are able to take orders, the marching orders. Leader of the EFF has demonstrated his ability to mobilize, not through the EFF, but also when he was the leader in the ANC Youth League, the economic freedom in our lifetime, if you remember. The walk. You remember?
Julius Malema,
it was
even
full to capacity.
Even as a personality, he is the most popular politician in South Africa.
I agree with you.
It's not even about whether the EFF will get 10%.
Yes.
He is the most known politician in South Africa. Current, an active politician currently.
And I can tell you, compared to the DA, which is the official opposition, would they fill up the stadium, FNB Stadium? Compared to the ANC, that is a governing party, would they fill up the FNB Stadium to capacity? Right? They might fill it up, but would it be to capacity? It's a question also that, because you can't compare a party like Jamah to the EFF. That would be a little bit unfair.
Yeah, for sure.
But would the national ruling party fill up the FNB Stadium to capacity? Because Julius did it. It's a question that has to be put on the table. If the ANC
and it's not a question of stadiums.
It has nothing to do with stadiums.
It's a question of commitment. Can you commit people?
The discipline.
Yeah. Can you commit people to come and listen to you and be sympathetic to your cause? So much so that they would part ways with money to come to you, and part ways with 4 hours of their time.
I agree.
And that's where you gauge commitment from the people.
100%.
And if they can be able to do that,
Yeah.
then you can say specifically the 90,000 people that came to a stadium to watch me.
Yeah.
You can then deduce that they will go to the voting booth
to the polls.
and stay on the line for an hour if the line is packed and vote for me.
Yeah, and also that doesn't mean if the ANC is unable to fill up FNB to capacity, then they will lose to the EFF.
Yeah, for sure.
That's another thing that we need
that's an interesting dynamic. Yeah,
you understand?
Yeah.
So what
instead those people who are pissed off with the ANC actually will still vote for the ANC.
Yes.
And those who are pissed off, some of them who are irritated significantly will just decide not to vote
100%.
as opposed to vote for someone else,
Yes.
which still is the question that you have to answer.
Yes.
How do you convert that person to vote for you?
Discipline. Discipline. And it is, we also need to give Julius a credit on that end. You know his followers, they are able to toe the line, the party line.
But remember that the people they're not your. So people who are turning their backs on ANC are not your voters. So you don't even have a direct line of communicating with them.
Yeah.
Right. So with the EFF members, it's understandable that if Julius Malema says to his councillors, if you don't get 20 people or the buses to come here, then there's going to be consequences. That's understandable. That's something to be argued by those councillors.
Councillors, yes.
Yeah. But it's the line of communication is open between them and their leader.
Yes.
Where now, how you can't expect discipline or anything that you impose on ANC voters to convert them to you without doing something, without showing them, waving a hand to say, I am here. And how do you do that? How do you wave the hand to say, I exist, I am here as Jamah, not you personally, but as a party.
As a party.
And this is the solution that we have to your problem.
Yeah.
If Soweto has power cuts significantly more than any other community, for example, because of the debt that's owed to Eskom, how do you undercut that? How do you use your own resources and time to something that doesn't really need you, but maybe it's an investment in future to say, as Jamah, we solve this problem for this community as a typical Foguti. No, but you can't have power cuts for 12 hours just because they owe a debt. How much is the debt? And can we make an arrangement so that they have their lights on or go back to the normal load shedding schedule as opposed to just have 12 hours or 5 days of power cuts just because they owe a debt? So that's how, in my mind's eye, you would then announce yourself to a group of people to say, as we're doing this mitigating for you between you and City Power or Eskom, we're doing it because we are Jamah. And if you're persuaded enough, then you can vote for us. Or you can find a different strategy.
Yeah. Look, last month, the previous council, I then tabled a motion to write off those debts as Jamah.
Interesting.
Last month.
Yeah.
However, coincidentally, it was not only Jamah that put that motion. Unfortunately, our motion didn't comply with legal prescripts of the motion to be admitted into council. Then it fell off. But fortunately, one of our members in the Government of Local Unity's motion was admitted to council. Together, including Jamah, we voted for that motion because we understand that it is the plight of the people. Whether we play politics amongst ourselves as politicians, it shouldn't be a factor for us to sabotage you on the basis of what we are fighting for the same space. No, we support you. You understand? Because we take the plight of the people very serious. We are saying, okay, our motion didn't succeed. Our motion was never admitted. So we'll support your motion because it's the same motion. You get my point? It
gets us to the same place.
It gets us to the same place.
Which is the cancelling of the debt for the people.
100%. And if that motion becomes successful, it is the mayor of Jamah who's going to implement. You see, those debt rehabilitation was only limited to communities which are serviced by City Power versus Eskom. Yeah, because our mandate doesn't go into Eskom. Our mandate is limited to City Power. The mandate of the city, not of the party, to be quite precise, but the mandate of the city. Once we have a representation in Gauteng province, we do not have a representation in Gauteng province. This is where we are going to carry the voices of the masses that are voting for us. And that is where the competency of Eskom would come to play. And there was a discussion between the Gauteng provincial government and the city to say, let us bring Eskom and the city together. And the city, which is the City Power, has to be a pilot project to service other regions. So we must take the mandate from Eskom and put it into City Power. There is that discussion that is currently happening right now as we speak.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose all of you, the UTM and everyone are going to have that question to answer. Whether you answer it convincingly or not, it's going to show in the polls.
Yes.
Whether or not you've answered convincingly, you can do a lot to the communities and show your presence. There's been a lot of political movements that emerged from just directly solving a people's problem.
Yes.
Okay, these people are living in shacks. There's 5,000 of them, or there's 50,000 of them.
Yeah.
We are going to pressure the city into building them houses, and all of a sudden, that pressure group becomes a political movement, and then they give themselves a name, for example.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of work to be done to convince people that they need to vote for you instead of turning their backs on the voters. The heat is appalling in Joburg. I'm going to try and wrap up our conversation because it's very, very difficult. It's been 30 degrees for the past 7 days, 33 degrees for the past 7 days. Maybe my last question to you then would be envisioning the future for your party and for the city. Let's start maybe with the city, the buildings, the explosions, and how were you able to assist with that, and how could you solve the problem of abandoned buildings being hijacked by people, given that your mayor is your comrade, the mayor of the city is your comrade? How is that a solvable problem long term? And also, long term, next year and beyond next year, what does Jamah do? How do you see it doing in the elections?
Okay. As I was driving here, I'm told on the phone that the mayor had an interview with one of the radio stations, I think 702 if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
So he was discussing his strategy on the debt rehabilitation, precisely on the issue of Eskom and JW, Joburg Water. But to be specific to your question, is hijacking buildings must be seen for what it is. That is my position. And that is the party's position, to say hijacked buildings must be seen for what it is. What do I mean by saying it must be seen for what it is? We must understand what is hijacking. So is hijacking criminalized or is not criminalized? And if it is, that means it's a criminal activity, right? So we would need all spheres of government, and the mayor is already working on, I'm not sure how far is, and I'm hoping that the report will sit in council this month on the hijacked building. And his vision is to call for a period of declaration. He wants to expropriate all those buildings which are not in a good use. And then the period of a declaration is that we will take what is our stock as the city. It's a discussion that I'm having with him, right? And I'm not talking on behalf of the executive or on behalf of the mayor. You asked me, since we're out here and you are from the same party, obviously we talk.
Yeah.
Right? So he was sharing his ideas and say, no, there's a syndicate and some of those syndicates are politicians. But we need to see hijacking for what it is. It's a criminal activity, right? So we are going into a declaration period. We'll take our stock as the city and we'll call all the private sector that owns the building to say, we're giving you a period of time. You must come and declare. And you must tell us your interest on this property. And failure to do so in that period we are going to expropriate as the city, and we'll give it to the private investment. The private investment must gentrify the city. It must change the outlook of the city so that the city must regain its glory from what it was at the time. You know, Bang Lachile, when I was the mayor at the time, I said, hey, Pella, during Christmas, best not talking pastas at Christmas and see it was, you know, when but yeah, how can the mayor say this? You know, he's talking about his Christmas clothes, but what in essence we were saying the city must retain its former glory because we are an African.
It was an
world-class
inviting city.
Yes,
you
correct.
could go there for a visit.
Yeah.
And Jamah, how do you foresee it doing? Last one.
We are saying people must register to vote. We understand that people might. There is a protest vote. A protest vote can be detrimental because once we protest, we are effectively voting for the opposition. Rather use your vote as a protest vote to say, I'm not going to vote for the ANC, but let me look for an alternative. And it is your democratic view to vote for whoever you want. But I, as a politician, I would say vote for Jamah to bring change that you're anticipating. You understand? And I'm also encouraging the youngsters out there to say the voter registration week, which was last week or 2 weeks back.
Yeah, it was recent.
Didn't come to an end. You can actually open up your phone and go to an IEC.
I registered online myself.
Yeah, you can register online. You don't have to wait for the week.
I didn't know that you could do that.
You know,
I registered online.
You can register online.
The last time I registered, I was in Cape Town.
Yes.
So now that I'm here, I registered online. So easy.
You can do it on your phone.
You have to take a photo of your ID when you're on the site.
Yeah.
Which is easy.
Yes.
Photo of your ID, flashlight.
Yes.
And that's it.
And that's it. And if you are lazy to do that, you can go to the nearest civic center. IEC has satellite offices positioned in those civic centers. You go there and then you can, because there's also an issue of demarcations that is very critical for us to highlight. The demarcations. You'd find, Guti, I'm voting here. Voting station X, which is Nkululeko. And now because of demarcations, I'm no longer voting into voting station Nkululeko. Now I'm taken to voting station Amad. You know, so it is our constitutional responsibility to go online to even check those things. Am I still voting where I'm supposed to vote?
There's load shedding. Fortunately, it's the end of the conversation. So there you are. Your city is doing brilliant, or your country is doing brilliant. It's not your fault. I'm being sarcastic, but it's not your fault. It's not your city's fault. It's your country's fault. Well, anyone who's not from South Africa hearing us talk about load shedding, it's the power cuts. Every single time we have to experience power cuts. But then, fortunately, coincidentally, that was towards the end of our discussion. Thank you very much for watching us. Thank you, Mr. Ahmad.
Thank you, sir.